I will record my daily reading practice from Don't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And it is true that I felt okay in that moment, but my bravado was also a defense mechanism. I knew if I were to start planning my race at that point, the bigness of it would become too much to comprehend. It would feel like I was supposed to run the length of the damn sky. It would feel impossible. In my mind, strategy was the enemy of the moment, which is where I needed to be. Translation: when it came to ultras, I was green as fuck. Max didn't press me, but he kept a close watch. I finished mile 25 at about the 4-hour mark, and I was still in 5th place, still running with my new Japanese friend. SBG was long gone and Kate was my only support crew. I would see her every mile, posted up in that lounge chair offering a sip of Muplex and an encouraging smile. I would run a marathon only once before while I was stationed in Guam. It was unofficial and I ran it with a fellow SEAL on a course we made up on the spot. But back then I was in excellent cardiovascular shape. Now here I was bearing down on 26.2 miles for just the second time in my entire life. This time without training, and once I got there, I realized that I would run beyond known territory. I had 20 more hours and nearly 3 more marathons to go. Those were incomprehensible metrics with no traditional milestones in between to focus on. I was running across the sky. That's when I started thinking that this could end badly. Max didn't stop trying to help. Each mile he would run alongside and check on me, and me being who I am, I told him that I had everything under control and had it all figured out, which was true. I had figured out that John Mads knew what the fuck he was talking about. Oh yes, the pain was becoming real. My quads throbbed, my feet were chafed and bleeding, and that simple question was once again bubbling up in my frontal lobe. Why? Why run 100 fucking miles without training? Why was I doing this to myself? Fair questions, especially since I had not even heard of the San Diego one day until 3 days before race day. But this time my answer was different. I was not on hospitality point to deal with my own demons or to prove anything at all. I came with a purpose bigger than David Goggins. This fight was about my once and future fallen teammates and the families they leave behind when shit goes wrong. Or at least that's what I told myself at mile 27. I had gotten the I had gotten the news about Operation Red Wings, a doomed operation in the remote mountains of Afghanistan, on my last day of US Army Free Fall School in Yuma, Arizona in June. Operation Red Wings was a 4-man reconnaissance mission tasked with gathering intelligence on a growing pro-Taliban force in a region called Swatlochar. If successful, what they learned would help define a strategy for a larger offensive in the coming weeks. I knew all four guys. Danny Ditz was in Bert's class 231 with me. He got injured and rolled just like I did. Michael Murphy, the OIC of the mission, was with me in class 235 before he got rolled. Matthew Axelson was in my Huya class when I graduated. More on the Huya class tradition in a moment. And Marcus Luttrell was one of the first people I met on my original lap through Buds. Before training begins, each incoming Buds class throws a party, and the guys from previous classes who are still in Buds training are always invited. The idea is so juice as much info is the idea is to juice as much information from brown shirts as possible because you never know what might help get you through a crucial evolution that could make all the difference between graduation and failure. Marcus was 6 feet 4 inches, 225 pounds, and he stuck out in that crowd like I did. I was a bigger guy too, back up to 210 by then, and he sought me out. In some ways, we were an odd pair. He was a hard as ex-handle from the Texas rangeland, and I was self-made masochist from the Indiana cornfields. But he had heard I was a good runner, and running was his main weakness. Goggins, do you have any tips for me? He asked, because I can't run for shit. I knew Marcus was a badass, but his humility made him real. When he graduated a few days later, we were his Huya class, which meant we were the first people they were allowed to order around. They embraced that SEAL tradition and told us to go get wet and sandy. It was a SEAL's rite of passage and an honor to share that with him. After that, I didn't see him for a long time. I thought I ran into him again when I was about to graduate with class 235, but it was his twin brother, Morgan Luttrell, who was part of my Hoya class 237, along with Matthew Axelson. We could have ordered up some poetic justice, but after we graduated, instead of telling their class to go get wet and sandy, we put ourselves in the surf in our dress whites. I had something to do with that. In the Navy SEALs, you are either deployed and operating in the field, instructing other SEALs, or in school yourself, learning or perfecting skills. What a thing he has written. In the Navy SEALs, you are either deployed and operating in the field. You are either deployed and operating in the field, instructing other SEALs, or in school yourself, learning or perfecting skills. We cycle through more military schools than most because we are trained to do it all. But when I went through BUDS, we didn't learn to free fall. We jumped by static lines which deployed our shoots automatically. Back then, you had to be chosen to attend US Army free fall school. After my second platoon, I was picked up for Green Team, which is one of the training phases to get accepted into the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Dave GRU, an elite unit within the SEALs. That required me to get free fall qualified. It also required that I face my fear of heights in the most confrontational way possible. We started off in the classrooms and wind tunnels of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which is where I reconnected with Morgan in 2005. Floating on a bed of compressed air in a 15-foot high wind tunnel, we learned correct body position, how to shift left and right, and push forward and back. It takes very small movements with your palm to move, and it's easy to start spinning out of control, which is never good. Not everyone could master those subtleties subtleties. But those of us who could left Fort Bragg after that first week of training and headed to an airstrip in the cactus fields of Yuma to start jumping for real. Morgan and I trained and hung out together for 4 weeks in the 127-degree desert heat of summer. We did dozens of jumps out of C-130 transport jets from altitudes ranging from 12,500 to 19,000 feet, and there is no rush like the surge of adrenaline and paranoia that comes with plummeting to earth from high altitude at terminal velocity. Each time we jumped, I couldn't help but think of Scott Guerin, the para-rescue man who survived a boat-jet jump from high altitude and inspired me on this path when I met him as a high school student. He was a constant presence for me in that desert and a cautionary tale. Proof that something can go horribly wrong on any given jump. When I jumped out of an airplane for the first time from high altitude, all I felt was extreme fear, and I could not pry my eyes from my altimeter. I was not able to embrace the jump because fear had clogged my mind. All I could think about was whether or not my canopy would open. I was missing the unbelievable thrill ride of the free fall, the beauty of the mountains painted against the horizon, and the wide open sky. But as I became conditioned to the risk, my tolerance for that same fear increased. It was always there, but I was used to the discomfort, and before long, I was able to handle multiple tasks on a jump and appreciate the moment too. 7 years earlier, I had been rooting around fast food kitchens and open dumpsters japping vermin. Now I was fucking flying. The final task in Yuma was a midnight jump in full kit. We were weighted we were weighed down with a 50-pound rucksack strapped with a rifle and an oxygen mask for the free fall. We were also equipped with cam lights, which were a necessity because when the back ramp of the C-130 opened up, it was pitch black. We couldn't see any damn thing. But still, we leapt into that moonless sky, 8 of us in a line, one after another. We were supposed to form an arrow, and as I maneuvered through the real world wind tunnel to take my place in the grand design, all I could see were swerving lights streaking like comets in an ink-well sky. My goggles fogged up as the wind ripped through me. We fell for a full minute, and when we deployed our chutes at around 4,000 feet, the overpowering sound went from full tornado to eerie silence. It was so quiet I could hear my heartbeat through my chest. It was fucking bliss, and when we all landed safely, we were free fall qualified. We had no idea that at that moment in the mountains of Afghanistan, Marcus and his team were locked into an all out battle for their lives at the center of what would become the worst incident in SEAL history. One of the best things about Yuma is that you have horrible call service. I am not big on texting or talking on the phone, so this gave me 4 weeks of peace. When you graduate any military school, the last thing you do is clean all the areas your class used until it's like you were never there. My cleaning detail was in charge of the bathrooms, which happened to be one of the only places in Yuma that has cell service, and as soon as I walked in, I could hear my phone blow up. Text messages about Operation Red Wings going bad flooded in, and as I read them, my soul broke. Morgan had not heard anything about it yet, so I walked outside, found him, and told him the news. I had to. Marcus and his crew were all MIA and presumed KIA. He nodded, considered it for a second, and said, "My brothers are not dead. Morgan is 7 minutes older than Marcus. They were inseparable as kids, and the first time they had ever been apart for longer than a day was when Marcus joined the Navy. Morgan opted for college before joining up, and during Marcus's Hell Week, he tried to stay up the whole time in solidarity. He wanted and needed to share that feeling, but there is no such thing as a Hell Week simulation. You have to go through it to know it, and those that survive are forever changed. In fact, the period after Marcus survived Hell Week and before Morgan became a SEAL himself was the only time there were any emotional distance between the brothers, which speak to the power of those 130 hours and their emotional toll. Once Morgan went through it for real, everything was right again. They each have half a trident tattooed on their back. The picture is only complete when they stand side by side. Morgan took off immediately to drive to San Diego and figure out what the hell was going on. He still had not heard anything about the operation directly, but once he reached civilization and his service hit, a tide of messages flooded his phone too. He floored his rental car to 120 mph and zoomed directly to the base in Coronado. Morgan knew all the guys in his brother's unit well. Axelson was his classmate in birth, and as facts trickled in, it was obvious To most that his brother wouldn't be found alive. I thought he was gone too, but you know what they said about twins. I knew my brother was out there alive. Morgan told me when we connected again in April 2018. I said that the whole time. That's it for the day.